What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to talk to you about today. I know I've been gone for about a week or so. I was in New Orleans for a meteorology conference, so that's where I was. And speaking of New Orleans, they are going to be getting some snow very soon. So we have a lot to talk about that, with heavy snow expected for much of the Deep South, as well as in the Carolinas and in the northeastern United States, all in the span of in the next 5 days. So we have to go ahead and get right into it. So let's go ahead and start with what we have from the National Weather Service. We have winter storm watches in effect all the way down to New Orleans and much of Louisiana and Mississippi right here. I have been doing a lot of coverage on Pat's Path Predictor. I have never seen in the history of this channel winter storm watches be issued this far to the south ever since I've done this. Now, granted, I'm sure there have been times where winter storm watches have been issued in the Deep South. For example, in the 1993 winter storm that hit through there caused almost 1.5 feet snow for parts of Alabama and those areas. But regardless, I have not seen winter storm watches be issued all the way down to the Gulf Coast, at least since I've started covering weather, since I started Pat's Path Predictor. So let's go ahead and dive right into this right here for the area around New Orleans. So winter storm watch is in effect right here. Winter precipitation causing moderate to major impacts is expected. Snow accumulations of 4 to 8 inches along the north of the I-10 and I-12 corridor and 2 to 6 inches south of this corridor are expected. There is a low chance of ice along and south of the I-10 and 12 corridor. This is for portions of Louisiana and Mississippi right here. Late Monday night into Tuesday evening. Impacts. Roads, especially bridges and overpasses, will likely become slick and hazardous. Travel could be very difficult, if not impossible. And if you think about it very quickly right here, this is 4 to 8 inches close to New Orleans. This isn't like the Midwest where 4 to 8 inches, they have plows and they can take care of that. The areas around New Orleans do not have any snow plows. They're not ready for this kind of weather. They can't drive in this type of weather right here. And this is something I also highlighted a lot when I covered the Tennessee snowstorm as well. A lot of people in the South cannot drive in this because they've never experienced it. So it's going to be causing some very, very major and serious impacts for a lot of areas. Let's go ahead and go to the winter storm watch over here in Jackson, Mississippi right here. What do we have going on? Total snow accumulations up to 4 inches possible. 4 inches in Jackson, Mississippi is pretty insane right there, to say the very least. But this isn't the only winter storm we are talking about. There's going to be also some winter storm watches issued for the Carolinas. We've been looking at the models. It's going to be the snow is going to be kind of hugging the coast and dropping potentially up to 9 to 10 inches of snow for much of North and South Carolina along the coast. So we have to watch out for that as well. I've been talking to my friend Connor. Shout out to you, from North Carolina. He's been bringing me updates about that. I wasn't able to talk to him too much because of my conference, but yeah, in fact, he sent me this right here. The newest Euro was going nuts. There's a lot of heavy snowfall expected for Georgia, then the Carolinas, and up to Virginia as well. But that's what we have going on with that part. We also have a more immediate threat right here for parts of Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New York, those areas as well as some extreme cold watches and advisories and warnings as well for much of the Midwest, as another Arctic blast is going to be moving through much of the United States. Let's go ahead and click on one of the winter storm warnings. We're actually going to go ahead and go to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just to kind of see what the winter storm warning is in effect for. Between 4 and 6 inches with localized amounts up to 7 right there. We're going to have to pay attention to that. It's going to cause a lot of impacts for a lot of the region right here, especially as Inauguration Day is approaching for President-elect Donald Trump. I've heard and I've been talking about this with some people behind the scenes. They're actually holding inauguration day inside because of how cold it is going to be. They are taking this very, very seriously, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to that as well. We also have winter storm warnings in effect for parts of Massachusetts and New England as well as winter storm watches as well. Let's go ahead and show you the winter storm watch that we have right here. 6 to 9 inches possible with this. This is a very serious situation that we are paying a close attention to. So let's go ahead now and dive right into the forecast models. We are going to be talking more about impacts and less of the meteorology behind it because we have 2 big snowstorms we need to cover. And I want to go ahead and cover them as thoroughly as I possibly can. So we're not going to be seeing the upper air observations like we kind of would typically whenever storms are a few days out. But because we have 2 pretty bad snowstorms, especially the second snowstorm down in the deep south, we're going to have to skip that and go more towards the impacts as well as the timing of all of this. Let's go ahead and start with the North American model, because they can model the first snowstorm that's going to be moving through. The NAM has snowfall, kind of generally what we're looking at right here. This is not the snowstorm that is what's warranting these winter storm warnings right here. This is just one wave of snow that's going to be moving out of the area very quickly. There's a low pressure system forming off the Gulf Coast right here and off the eastern coast as well. That's going to be organizing and developing, especially in the next couple of days, according to the North American model. This is your classic nor'easter setup. You see low pressure systems developing off the Gulf of Mexico, then they move inland, they develop a secondary low, and then they push further up to the north, and they ultimately develop. But here's what we have going on right here. We have a lot of snowfall according to the NAM, expected for a lot of these regions in the I-95 corridor. That is going to cause a lot of impacts, and this snow is going to be very wet, and it's going to be very heavy, and it's going to be falling very fast, and that's what's going to ultimately allow for the snowstorm to ultimately bring as much of a punch as it does. Like, we're expecting several inches of snow for a lot of these regions right here. Let's go ahead and show you what the NAM is showing right here. I do think the NAM is a little bit conservative in my opinion, but the impacts are still going to be very, very severe. 6 inches for Boston, New Jersey, 3 to 5. And the Appalachians get over 6 inches of snow, potentially up to a foot in the higher peaks as well. But that's just one model right there, the North American. Let's go ahead and show you the GEM RDPS just to kind of give you some context and a general idea. First wave of snow moves through, then the nor'easter develops and brings in a second wave of snow, brings a lot of heavy snowfall to parts of New Jersey, New York, and especially in New England as well as it moves out of the United States. Here's what we have for the total snow accumulation. GEM RDPS is pretty certain that this is going to be a pretty big storm right here. So here's what we're looking at. Right here. For the Appalachians, we're looking at up to 10 inches of snow in the higher peaks. DC is not going to be seeing that much snow. They're going to be south of the rain snow line. Same with New York City. The rain snow line is a bit finicky with these runs, but depending on where you are, you could either get 1 inch of snow or 12 inches of snow, depending on what we're looking at. But the 12 inches are likely going to be isolated in the higher peaks of the Appalachian Mountains, especially in New Hampshire and those areas right there. But ultimately, you're still going to look at least 6 inches of snow for a lot of areas in Pennsylvania, upstate New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and all of those areas right there. So that's something you're going to have to pay attention to as well. Let's go ahead and show you the GEM GDPS's snow totals as well. The GEM GDPS is a bit more aggressive than its counterpart. Here's what we have right here for parts of the Philadelphia area. Depending on where you are, and we can go ahead, no, we can't zoom in on this, unfortunately. Depending on where you are in Pennsylvania, if you're in Scranton, you could see up to 9 to 10 inches of snow. If you're in Bucks County, for example, that rain snow line is right on you. Over there. So pretty much it depends on where this ultimately develops, but you could get anywhere from like 1 inch of snow to up to 10 inches of snow in the northern parts of Bucks County if this run holds right here. And then you are still looking at 5 inches of snow or so around Boston, stays north of DC, stays north of Baltimore, New York City, especially the northern suburbs could get a lot of snow from this. We're going to have to pay attention to it. The European, though, is showing some pretty interesting developments right here. The European doesn't have it a bit further to the south than the GEM RDPS and GEM GDPS, the rain snow line that is, rather. And it gives DC about 5 inches of snow, Baltimore around 6, and it gives New York City a better chance of snowfall. Same with Boston as well, getting 6 inches of snow. A bit more conservative on the snowfall totals, I will say right there, but something you're going to have to pay attention to. Then you have the GFS, which has been going very aggressive with this, and this is what I would say is your worst case scenario right here. The 6C GFS, let's actually go ahead and show you the 12C GFS as well. The 6 and the 12Z GFS are, in my opinion, the worst case scenarios right here, mainly because you're seeing a lot of snowfall, and you have to also understand, yes, the storm is going to be exiting out in a few hours, depending on where you are, but it's going to be bringing very powerful. It's going to be bringing very powerful snowfall, very heavy snowfall, and you could get several inches in the span of a few hours from this. And this is what the GFS is predicting right here, up to 10 inches of snow in a lot of areas. In fact, New York City, you could see over 6 inches of snow. Same with DC and Baltimore as well. Boston could see over 10 inches of snow from this as well. This could potentially impact tens of millions of people right there, so we're going to have to pay very close attention to it. You also have the cold snap that's going to be moving through in the days following as well, which we will go ahead and we'll get into after the second snowstorm, so that way we can talk about the impacts and the timing it's going to generate in the deep south, because that is a snowstorm that I'm actually more concerned about than the nor'easter that we're looking at. Yes, the nor'easter is very bad. It's going to bring in a lot of impacts and do all of that stuff, but I'm very concerned about this snowstorm that's going to be starting in Texas, moving through the deep south, and bringing a lot of snow to the Carolinas, because these are areas that are likely going to see historic amounts, and I wouldn't necessarily say historic per se, as in, they're record breaking, but historic as this hasn't happened in a very long time. And the impacts are also going to be quite historic as well. So we're going to have to pay very close attention to it as well. Let's go ahead and start with the NAM run. The NAM can give us a general idea of the initialization, but it doesn't go all the way out, unfortunately. But we do have a general idea of what may be happening. So here's what the NAM is forecasting. The NAM is predicting a lot of the snow to mainly be in northern Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, and areas along the Gulf Coast to get sleet generally. I've talked about this before, and I've talked about this before, and I will continue to stand by it. I think the the NAM is overdoing the inversion. It overdid the inversion with that huge Midwestern snowstorm that kicked off the year, and it resulted in me having to go to school a day early because of it. It overdid that. It still brought a lot of snow. It also brought a lot of ice as well, but it was not nearly as far to the north as what the NAM was predicting. I do not exactly necessarily trust the NAM, at least in terms of where all this sleet is. I think the inversion's not going to be strong enough to really support that much sleet initially. Let's go ahead and also show you the GEM RDPS as well. Initialization's pretty good. It does bring Houston, interestingly, some sleet and then about an inch of snow or so, and then it really starts to bring a lot of impacts to Atlanta, to Birmingham, Montgomery, New Orleans, Jackson, those areas as well. That's the GEM RDPS. GEM GDPS, similar situation, and then it really intensifies as it gets to the Carolinas right there and moves out. This is what we have the GFS as well, generally. GFS bringing a mixed precipitation to much of New Orleans, and then a bunch of snowfall as it moves through. And then the GFS brings quite a bit of snowfall to the Carolinas right there. The European also has been quite aggressive with this as well. So we'll go ahead and show you the snowfall amounts as well as the potential freezing rain amounts, just to kind of give you an idea. And because the NAM and the NAM nest don't go all the way out, we're going to be using more of the long range runs. I know I know they're a little bit more unreliable, but we have to do that because snowfall is going to be starting the snowstorm is going to be pretty much continuing by the time the mid-range runs lapse out and they run out of time. So that's what we have generally going on. We're not going to zoom in, unfortunately, at least not yet. But here's what the GEM GDPS is predicting. They are predicting up to 13 inches of snow in parts of southern Louisiana. I'm not trolling. That is 13 inches of snow for parts of Louisiana, and generally more widespread, 8 to 12 inches of snow is expected according to the GEM GDPS for southern Mississippi, Alabama. It calms down a bit in Georgia, and then you get to the Carolinas and it ramps up, especially along the coast. This is a very peculiar setup where the heaviest snow is not inland, but it's actually right along the coast, and it develops really nicely right along there as well. And that's where your highest snowfall totals, if you live in the Wilmington area and the Outer Banks and parts of northeastern North Carolina, that's where your heaviest snow and your most snow is going to be. And I've been talking to my friends who from Storms United who've been living down there in the Carolinas. It's going to be a very powerful system for you guys down there. Let's also go ahead and show you the European run as well. We don't have the 12Z out, unfortunately. We can use the 6Z and we can use the 0Z to extrapolate. But here's what the European is wanting. Let's go ahead and start in Texas real quickly. The European wants downtown Houston to get 8 inches of snow. I think, in my opinion, that is a bit unrealistic. But I also do want to check as well, just to make sure the NWS is watching this. Yeah, they do have a winter storm watch out for Harris County, which is where Houston is. Pretty interesting. Total snow and sleet accumulations up to 3 inches with locally higher amounts is what's expected according to the National Weather Service for a lot of these areas. I think the Europeans overdoing it in Texas quite a bit. Louisiana, maybe not, especially as that low organizes and develops. But New Orleans getting 5 inches of snow is absolutely wild, especially considering that that's where I was for about a week. The temperature, the high temperature over there was at like 60 degrees one day, and then you're going to see snow fall right after this, which is pretty concerning considering this is happening so far to the south. And then if you take a look at the immediate coast of the Carolinas, you're looking at up to 8 inches of snow in Wilmington. You're looking up to 7 inches in Myrtle Beach. Charleston could see 6 inches of snow. Outer Banks is going to see absolutely ridiculous amounts of snow as well. That is very concerning, to say the very least. Keep in mind, this is just the Europeans run, and I'll also show you the 0Z. The 0Z was actually even more aggressive than the 6Z. The 6Z was actually being a bit more conservative and a bit more local. I want to see what the 12Z has to offer before I jump to any conclusions, but regardless, this is a very concerning situation to have to deal with. Let's go ahead and also show you the GFS. GFS has been pretty interesting. Let's use the 12Z. The GFS does really want Louisiana to get hammered by snowfall. Doesn't have as much in Houston as it did before previously, but then you have the system organizing. It doesn't curiously bring that much snow to North Carolina, I would say, compared to the rest of the runs I'm noticing. Then again, we'll have to see what happens. I want to see what the 0Z has in comparison. Then the 6Z, yeah, okay. It was a bit of a downtrend according to the GFS, so that'll be interesting to see how this pans out. But regardless of that, very serious situation to pay attention to. And keep in mind that 6 inches of snow in the Midwest is absolutely different. It's a way different ballpark than 6 inches of snow down the deep south. I highlighted this earlier in the video as well. But 6 inches of snow in the deep south is absolutely monstrous. It's, for comparison, probably 18 inches of snow for much of the Midwest, just to give you a comparison right there. And that's what I'll leave it as. But also, you have to watch for this Arctic outbreak as well that we are looking at again. I know, we still have to deal with that quite a bit. Let's go ahead and show you the temperatures as this outbreak starts to push in. The Arctic outbreak really ramps up for much of the Midwest and the deep south right here. This is January 20th right here. This is the overnight hours of of Monday right here. We're looking at temperatures getting down to in the mid to upper 20s, all the way down to Houston. That is pretty insane, to say the very least. And you have temperatures in Minnesota, Wisconsin, those areas, getting down to negative double digits, which, again, they're more used in its tone to that, but they have extreme cold warnings up there for wind chills of minus 50 or lower, which is absolutely monstrous, if you ask me. And this cold air also spreads out quite a lot. For example, like Pennsylvania, there's not going to be very many areas where you're going to see a temperature overnight that's going to be over 0 degrees. In Maryland and D.C., you're a little bit better, around 11 or so. But regardless of that, very scary situation for those who've already been dealing with these Arctic outbreaks earlier this season. So we're going to have to pay attention to that. But this is going to be very interesting, and this is expected to last for the next few days as a high-pressure system moves through much of the Midwest and much of the United States. It then exits, but you're still getting cold air regardless of that. And it continues. It does warm up a little bit as it goes on, as a ridge pattern starts to emerge, but then you have troughs really starting to ramp up, and then you have kind of same old situation as what we were seeing last month. So that's the general situation we're dealing with right here. We had a lot to talk about today, and I want to say thank you for kind of being patient with me as I was attending this conference. I'm finally back. We're going to be covering all of this winter weather every single step of the way, so be sure you stay tuned for that. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us get more people engaged with weather. If you want to come hang out with us at Storms United and you want to help out and kind of ask us questions about what you could be expecting, especially down in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, those areas, be sure to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that will be in the end screen. Also, shout out to Daniel as an official sponsor of the Pat's Path Predictor channel. If you want to support the channel more directly and promote and support my projects that I'm working on a few documentaries behind the scenes that I'm going to be releasing in the near future. Be sure to join the Pat's Path Predictor Patreon. The link is the first link in the description down below. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.